you guys, welcome back to my channel. So for this video, I thought I'd do a story time of this horrible relationship I was in. It was just toxic. He was a manipulator, a cheater, a liar. It was just not a good relationship. So to start it off, I was 20. I was still living at home with my parents. Didn't really know where my life was going. And so I was on Meet Me one day, just a simple little dating site. And I met this guy, we'll call him Bob, and we talked for a few days, and then we met in person. He picked me up and took me out on a date to my favorite restaurant, Steak and Shake. And he was a very country guy. He was very camo, very country music, just very country. And so we get to Steak and Shake, and it's really super awkward, but I get my usual chicken strips and fries, and we get along and talk, and then he dropped me back off at home, and we kept talking for the next 2 weeks. And so we talked for another 2 weeks, and I decided to move in with this guy. Very fast. Probably not the best idea in the world, but I decided to move in. Now, first red flag, he lived in his grandma's basement. So he's this 25-year-old man living in his grandma's basement. Kind of sketchy right there, and it was in the middle of nowhere, someplace I've never even heard of before. Could not find a job to save my life. Like, it was just not a good situation to be in. And about a few days after I moved in with him, I was messing around on his tablet. He had gone to the bathroom, and I accidentally came across a dating site that, according to the dating site, he had just been on like 2 minutes ago. And I'm like, okay, this is a little odd, but I just kind of brushed it under the rug, and I didn't think much of it. I put up with it because I thought he was the best I was gonna ever have. He told me that I was the best he was the best I was ever gonna have, and so. But there were quite a few red flags with this relationship. Like, he worked 15 minutes away from where we lived. Well, he'd leave work early, 2.5 hours early. I didn't really think much of it. His grandma told me that he had been doing that for a long time. He just wanted a good parking spot. So I didn't think much of that. But none of his friends at work knew about me, and I wasn't allowed to meet any of them. So that was a big thing right there, because if I'm dating you, I want to know your family, I want to know your friends, I want to meet these people, but I didn't exist. He also had a Facebook, but he told me he deactivated it because he didn't like Facebook. Well, I found out one day that it wasn't deactivated, that he blocked me and got on Facebook on a regular basis, talking to other girls, pretending he was single. So our relationship was really rocky. It was on and off for 2 years. He was kind of an abusive guy. He'd push me around, leave bruises on me, call me every name in the book, and I'm small, so that was not a very good situation. But I gave up one time. I just couldn't take it anymore, so we broke up. And I moved in with my best friend from high school. And I was like, this is it. I'm done. I'm moving on. I can't deal with his abusiveness, his cheating, his lying to me. I can't do it anymore. So I moved in with her, and she lived with her parents, and so it was kind of an awkward situation, but I grew up with her parents. Like, I knew them. They were like second parents to me, so that part didn't really bother me. And so he came over one day to drop off the rest of my stuff and give me back a phone he was using that I had let him use. Well, later on that day, a random person texted the phone. And I'm like, okay, this is weird. And I'm like, I don't know you. Who are you? And she's like, it's your girlfriend. And I'm like, what? So me and her started talking a little bit, and come to find out, she worked with him, and he had been sleeping with her for 2 months of our relationship without me knowing. She didn't know about me either. And so he didn't just lose me in this process, he lost her too. So he was left with no girlfriends. And me and her, we became friends and we talked about everything, and she told me all this stuff I didn't know, like when he was leaving 2 hours early for work, he was picking her up for work, they'd sit in the parking lot and fool around before work, and then he'd take her home and they'd fool around at home. And he was telling me he was best friends with her brother, who he also worked with, and so he was telling me that he was going over to his friend's house. Well, they lived together, and so he was going over to his friend's house, but he was sleeping with his friend's sister. So that's a whole another story. After that, I'm like, I'm definitely done. Like, no more. But me and his cousin were still kind of in contact. We talk every once in a while. And so she got me this job at McDonald's. Worst job I've ever had in my entire life, but I needed the money. I was alone for the first time in 2.5 years. So I needed the job, I needed the money, so I took her up on it. And I loved having my independence, but I felt like I was being a burden on my friend and her parents. I feel like I'm always a burden. I have like super low self-esteem, and I feel like I'm just a burden to people, and that hurts me sometimes. And so I decided to give him another chance and move back in with him so I could leave my friend's house and not be a burden to her parents anymore. And so me and him got back together, and I moved back in with him, and I was still working at McDonald's and everything. And so his grandparents decided one day that they were gonna up and sell all their stuff and get a van and just travel the US. And we're like, okay. And so they ended up giving us the house. Well, we couldn't afford it on our own. We weren't really making that much combined. So we had his cousin, who I was close with, and her dad move in. Well, her dad was not a nice guy. He pill addict, just not a good guy. So he ended up stealing money from us, so we got in a huge fight and they left. Well, we ended up letting his other aunt and uncle and 3 cousins move in with us. And he ended up losing his job for attendance, so he was just taking me to work every day, and I worked about 45 minutes away. 45 minutes away from where we lived, so he was just taking me to work every day, and he was just chilling in the town. It was a super small town, and so he was just chilling there while I worked, and then we'd go home. Well, my manager was begging me to let him fill out an application because he was already sitting around. Why not give him a job? And I'm like, I don't know, working together wouldn't be the best for our relationship. And finally I just broke down and I'm like, okay. So he filled out an application, got the job there, and we started working together, and that's when things started going south again. Me and the girls I worked with, we were all super, super, super close. Like, they were some of my best friends. And most of them were in high school, so they were like 16, 17. Well, I'd have them come into me all the time saying that he was hitting on them on Facebook, messaging them inappropriate things, trying to sleep with them. And that's when things started getting not so good. I had a best friend, and we hung out with her and her boyfriend, and she had a little baby, and so we hung out with them, and we went to the zoo with them. And she ended up coming by McDonald's one day, and she told me that he was messaging her on Facebook, and he was telling her, I wish I had a girl like you, but I'm stuck with her instead. And that really hurt because she was my best friend, and he honestly thought she wasn't going to tell me what he was saying to her. And so that really hurt. And then there was this other girl who, I don't go through people's phones, but I went through his phone because I had reason to. And so I went through his phone, and on Facebook I found all these messages between him and this girl, and she was 16. And he was messaging her really inappropriate things. And so I messaged her from my Facebook, and I'm like, I thought we were friends. Why didn't you tell me my boyfriend was saying these things to you? And her dumb little 16-year-old self is like, well, I thought you knew and were okay with it. Like, really? You thought I'd be okay with my boyfriend talking to a 16-year-old in inappropriate ways? didn't make much sense, but I stayed with him. Once again, he was very good at manipulating me, making me think that I could never find anyone as good as him and that I needed him, and I stayed with him. And so we ended up deciding that we needed to move closer to where we worked because we were wasting a lot of gas driving back and forth every day for work. So we ended up finding, through someone we worked with, she told us about the trailer park she lived in, and we ended up finding out that we could get a trailer. Not the most ideal situation in the world, but not a bad one, and we could afford it. And so we decided to move in there, and it was awesome having our own place to do our own things. And I got animals, a million cats, a dog. I loved it. My friends were coming all the time. Just the most amazing feeling I've ever had. Well, we weren't doing so good. He was still cheating on me. And so I decided to end things again. My friends are like, you can do better than him. You don't need him. Why are you still with him? Broke up with him. I'm like, I don't need this drama anymore. I have friends. I have my money. I can do things on my own. And so he moved out of the place, and he moved in with his cousin, and she lived about an hour away. And so we were broken up for a couple weeks, and I was getting kind of lonely, so I decided to get on Tinder, and I decided to get a friend with benefits. Not really who I am as a person. I'm not really a friends with benefits kind of person, but I'm like, YOLO, I'll get a friend with benefits. What can it hurt? So I get this friend with benefits, and somehow this guy, Bob, finds out that I have a friend with benefits. And so he's a sick and twisted individual, and he wanted to know all the details of everything I did with my friend with benefits. So that right there, that's kind of gross. And so he's blowing up my phone one day. He found out that this guy was going to come over. And so he was blowing up my phone telling me that he wanted me to call him afterwards so I could tell him every detail about what happened with this guy. And he just kept going at it and going at it and going at it. And finally, I'm like, okay, whatever. I will tell you every detail of what me and this guy do. Really not having the intention to. But I'm like, okay, whatever. If it gets you to shut up, I will. So this guy comes over. We hang out for a little while. Then he leaves. Well, Bob starts blowing up my phone. Just texting, calling. I'm ignoring everything. And then he starts texting me. He's like, I'm going to drive over there and I'm going to take from you what you promised me. So that was a little scary. So I was texting my best friend, and I'm like, you need to come over here. I'm scared to death. I don't believe he's gonna come over here, but I don't want to call his bluff because he's crazy. So can you please come over here? I'm scared. And she's like, okay, I have to wait for my dad to go to sleep and then I'll be over. And so he's still blowing up my phone telling me he's gonna come over. I'm like, whatever, leave me alone. Well, finally he does come over. He busts in my house, attacks me, just starts trying to get my phone from me, saying that it was his and that he wanted it back, even though my name was on the bill. I paid the bill. It was mine, but he wanted it from me. So he starts grabbing my wrists and shaking me back and forth, leaving bruises on me. I get a swollen lip, just horrible. And finally he pries the phone away from me and takes off. And so about 15 minutes later, my friend comes, and I'm full out panic mode. I can't breathe. I'm hyperventilating. She's like, we need to call the police, and I literally couldn't speak, so she did it for me. And it took the police about 10 minutes to get there. And so I'm talking to them. I'm telling them what happens. They see the bruises he left, my swollen lip. They're like, okay, so my friend was using her phone to contact Bob through my phone. And he's like, she can either give me $100 tonight or wait to get her phone tomorrow. And I'm like, I'm not giving you money for my phone. That takes away from my bills if I give you that money. And so he's like, then you won't get your phone. And so they go at it for probably like an hour or so. And I'm just ready to give up. And then he texts saying that he dropped my phone at at the entrance of the trailer park where the mailboxes are. He said he dropped my phone on the mailboxes and he left. Well, the cop is still there. He jumps in his car, he goes after him. My friend runs to the mailboxes, gets my phone, and everything's fine. He's gone. I got my phone. My friend had to be home, so she left. And I'm just laying around. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning. I have to get up at work and be at work by 4:30 in the morning, so I'm like, I should probably get some rest. Well, I had just dozed off and there's a knock on the door. So I open up the door and it's a cop. He had Bob's mom's ID, asking me if I knew where she was, and I'm like, I have no clue where that woman is, nor do I care. And so he tells me that they picked him up for driving on a suspended license, because he hadn't had a license since he was 19 years old, and he was 27 at the time. And so he was driving on a suspended license and then domestic battery. And so I'm like, that's awesome that they got him. So I end up falling asleep for about an hour or so, and then I have to be up and at work at 4:30 in the morning. I'm texting like everyone I know, can you give me a ride to work? Can you give me a ride to work? Finally, the manager, she's like, yeah, I can swing by and pick you up. So I go to work covered in bruises. I can hardly stand, just horrible, horrible, horrible conditions. And my store manager shows up, and she had something against me the whole time. I don't know why. And so she took his side in all this. And I mean, there was a rumor going around that he was sleeping with her daughter, so I understand why she took his side in all this. And so I was just being outcast. Well, she was still gonna let him work there along with me, but she was gonna change our schedules. So she was gonna shorten my schedule. I was gonna work 4 o'clock in the morning till 11 in the afternoon. That gives me 7 hours. And he was going to get to work 11 to 7 or 8 every day. So he'd get 8 to 9 hours. And so that alone, because I had a place to pay for, I had bills, I had animals, I had all this. And so that alone was bad. Well, he ended up not showing up for months and months and months. So he ended up just not working there anymore. But he became obsessed with me and just like stalkerish. So he would add me on Facebook. I would block his Facebook. So he'd go and create a new Facebook, so I'd block him on that Facebook. And this process went on 3 or 4 times. He did the same with Instagram. Then he would download those free texting apps, and he would create a new number, create a fake name, and try to pretend to be these other people messaging me. And I'm one of those people, I don't give away my number to anyone. Like, I don't just go on the internet and give my number away, so I knew it was him. And I'm like, whatever, leave me alone. And that finally ended about a year or so ago, and we've been broken up for like 3 years now. So that happened for quite a while. And I don't really, his cousin is still obsessed with me. I don't really hear about him or from him anymore. But, you know, he hurt me pretty bad. And then his family went on Facebook and told all these lies about me and tagged me in them. And I'm one of those people that I don't fight back. If you want to say these mean things about me, go for it, because I know the truth. I don't need to fight with you. And so they were just saying funny things, like I had him in a headlock one time, and I'm like, I'm not even 5 foot, and he was like 6'3". I'm like, how am I gonna get him in a headlock? Am I gonna jump, use a ladder, what? Then they said other lies, like I wouldn't let him eat a bowl of cereal one day. I'm like, you guys are messed up. So I just had a good laugh at it all. They were calling me a whore, a liar, all this other kind of stuff. I'm like, I know what I know. And so I ended up staying in that place for a while. I had all these friends. These friends were the ones who encouraged me that I didn't need him and that I was too good for him. And because he spent the last 3 years manipulating me, calling me ugly, fat, worthless, saying that nobody was ever gonna love me and that I needed him because I had nobody else. And these friends really, they reinforced the fact that I didn't need him and that I could do it without him. And for that, I am forever grateful. So that was my story about my ex abusive, lying, cheating ex. I hope you liked it. Make sure and give a thumbs up and comment down below anything you want me to do. And don't forget to hit that subscribe